Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
Real people making bold moves. Unforgettable journeys into life's next chapter. This is the Second Act Podcast.
Every day is a new chance. Mindset on a new path. Anything is possible. Any limit I surpass. Everything is in my grasp. I got tunnel vision with a pickaxe. Life is more fun when you live like there's no strings attached.
Welcome back to the Second Act, Jeremy.
Hello.
How you doing, my friend?
Well, it's very weird to be sitting here in the shoes of such a great man as John Ballinger, but I cannot fly a helicopter. I do not have great stories about that, but I do have some podcasting experience. So you get me this month or this week, I guess, depending on when you're listening to this. So
You have your own great stories that go back decades in the TV and film industry. So I know some of them. You've shared some of them on our show, and I couldn't be more ecstatic about having you join me today because you bring a dimension of conversation than John would. So it's going to be super fun today.
all right, let's see what we can wrangle up here.
Let's see what we can do. Today is going to be a really interesting. I'm going to sort of tee things up, just looking back a little bit on the second act. I can't believe we're in 70-something episodes now, second year, I think approaching into our third year of doing this. And
amazing.
All those courageous explorers who have set out on their second act, whatever that may be. It could be philanthropy, it could be a new career, it may be something in their personal life, and everything in between from all different backgrounds. Just incredible stories. And one of the amazing things that I've taken from this is the importance of having an accountability partner on that journey, someone to help give you that courage and to think about things from an objective perspective. We all love our family and friends, but sometimes they don't give you the raw information that you need. And some of the folks who have been on this, who are in their second act, attribute doing that and some of the success to an accountability partner or a coach. And some of them have gone on to be coaches themselves. They've reached wherever they want to reach inside of organizations or their own personal endeavors, and they still love to help people, and they want to make an impact that way. And that's our audience will know shortly why I'm talking about this. But the other thing I'll mention is recently in Colorado, these episodes usually take a month or two to go out, but we just had Colorado Startup Week here. It's an annual event. And some of the big takeaways from that were pretty amazing to me to hear based on the conversations that we've had, Jeremy.
Yeah.
One of the important ones was this idea of giving first and acts of kindness, which I think we can all agree the world needs a lot more of these days. A strong sense of community and connection.
Absolutely.
And that being healthy is an advantage. There's this weirdness that goes on from time to time, and like work yourself to death in some cases, literally.
Yep.
And I know you've seen instances of that, but actually there are some performance-related things that people are starting to talk about more when you keep yourself healthy on a number of fronts. Physiologically, not just physically. So with all that said, I know that was a longer intro than normal, and I know you and I have talked offline, Jeremy, about some of that, but I think it was a good setup for our guest today.
Absolutely. A couple things I think. Well, for those of you who don't know, I produce the podcast, I edit the podcast, and they're on our network, Seltzer Kings, which is a growing podcast network. And, Michael was talking about accountability and having that person. And I honestly lean on Michael a lot. Michael is one of those people who can tell me straight if I'm making a decision that may not be in the best interest of the company or something it's little, not thought out. But yeah, it's good to have that partner. It's good to have that accountability partner, mentor, coach, any sort of thing like that, which goes right into the guest for the day.
Thank you for that. I'm humbled by those comments, Jeremy. So I
could have gone
appreciate
longer.
the plug. But let's not keep our audience waiting any longer. I would like to introduce today, super excited about this, Cara-Lyn Giovanniello. And
CLG for those who
CLG for those who
really
don't want to just spell it all out. She's a powerhouse in leadership coach, facilitator, and founder of CLG Coaching with more than 18 years of experience activating confidence, accountability, and growth in leaders and teams. She's designed award-winning programs like the Integral Lead program at Square, hosted executive offsites for Jack Dorsey and the Twitter leadership team, partnered with global organizations including AWS, Google, LinkedIn, Capital Group, and Cash App. Her career also includes senior leadership roles at Block, Nextdoor, UC Berkeley, and Booz Allen Hamilton, where she built and scaled learning strategies that blend performance with emotional intelligence, empathy, and humor. Beyond her corporate work, she has served on the boards of Sidebar and Coaching for Everyone, advancing leadership opportunities for underrepresented and indigenous communities. So we are super excited to dig into her journey today. Welcome to the show, CLG.
Yay,
Welcome.
thank you guys. It's so lovely to be here. I can't wait to have a good combo with you both.
Yeah. Very
Yes.
cool. A lot of incredible things on that resume right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of, I wanted to say when he was saying like heard of a few, there's a few on there. There's some big names there. So can't wait to get into this.
Great.
Yeah, and all those amazing logos and incredible companies that you've worked at, you didn't just land there. There was an entire life journey that sort of led to each one of those and the impact you had and what you took away with them. So why don't we sort of roll back to the beginning, and why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, some early childhood influences that really stuck with you, and we go from there.
Yeah, it feels like such the right place where we say, let's go back to the beginning. So let's do that, gentlemen.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right.
I was very lucky because I grew up in a family of educators, and my parents actually owned a preparatory school, K through 8th preparatory school. So I was always around the type of energy where the belief was somebody could learn something, something could develop something. I didn't know any other way. I, of course, was not going to be an educator or in anything in that vein because that's not what we do is mimic our parents. So I was going to be a doctor because I knew I could help people and that felt right. It was only until I failed every math and science class I basically ever took that I was like, maybe I need to find a slightly different, vein to be doing this, help sort of, profession. But, that piece about doing right by others and really trying to help people grow and to scale themselves, that had a huge impact on me then and is now one of my core values. And I've just always been fascinated by people, how they interact, how they're motivated, why some people seem to thrive, why others struggle. I used myself always as the test case. I'm a very introspective person, potentially too much. If we want to go into, I have anxious attachment style and ADHD, and I have all of these things that just require me to really have to know myself in order to be successful. So I kind of, delve into this capacity where I'm just fascinated how people understand themselves emotionally, how they use that information to build relationships, and then how relationships themselves can create something really magical and potentially new and innovative, which is a lot of the work that I do. But basically, what I learned as a child very, very quickly is that if you pay attention to people, you really give them your attention, you really give them your listening ears, as we say to my kids, people light up. They light up when they feel heard and they shut down when they don't. And that observation stuck with me my whole life because my dad was a real people person. I consider myself a real people person. And I sort of used that as a driver to understand that unfortunately, fortunately, however we want to take this conversation, a lot of senior leaders, they're not as emotionally or relationally intelligent as we give them credit for. They know their strategy. They probably know their job very well, but getting people to understand as they are adults and as they are very senior leaders, how they can still evolve and how they can evolve into a leader that gets things done, but that has the respect and admiration of their teams. That's not always a given. So these were real light bulb moments for me where I sort of saw discrepancies that I thought maybe I could help to resolve. I also knew that I was the type of person that was going to, go down with the ship if that's what it took in order to get somebody on ship. I've sort of changed that, but that was a way that I was in the past is I'm going to get you to change. I'm going to get you to evolve, even if it kills me in the process. And, that sort of led me into different parts of my career that, became an L&D, not because I wanted to do learning and development, but because I saw so clearly a lot of companies and a lot of organizations, they didn't know how to do this and they didn't know how to do it for an adult audience. So that was taking everything I knew about education for children and reevaluating it and modernizing it so that adults would buy into it and that they would want to create change for themselves and for the people around them.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Having a family of educators and sort of observing how they interact with each child's uniqueness and what they bring
Yeah.
to the classroom and among their peers. But then from the other perspective, as a child, almost from birth, there's this component of succeed and what does success look like and achieve, and that sort of works its way into the development of who we are, and maybe creates some of this friction between being a good active listener and trying to understand people, but also I need to achieve at this high level, and say maybe sometimes I do that at any and all cost.
It's that blind sprint, right? It's like we all get into it initially at that blind sprint, like blinders on. Let's just
Yeah.
get it done, and then yeah, hopefully we evolve later. Which yeah, I feel like the three people sitting here have done that and
Yep.
pivoted and used that a lot of that. You know,
Yeah.
Michael and I talk about this a lot. That sort of blind sprint initially when you first get into an industry, and how much it just week after week, month after month will just take it out of you because you're working your weekends, you're working 14 hours a day. And I think if I've learned anything from the second act, it is get 1% better every day, get a little better, get, just put your head down and continually work. I've always been a great worker, but I think I've learned to be a smarter worker. And I think that's kind of what y'all are talking about.
Agreed. I like the word fluidity. Like you
Mm.
become fluid in just a lot of skill sets, and then they become so ingrained and so natural that you don't even know you're doing them. But you obviously had to learn to get there. So I
Yes.
appreciate you bringing that up.
So, out of this incredible collection of companies that you worked at, which one sort of started your career? And then, from the things that you took away from family life in that journey, what was, maybe, is there one or two things that a conversation or even a person that really stood out as you started into your professional career with some of these companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I obviously ask a lot of people that I work with to define their leadership story. I think it's a really important component of understanding what kind of leader you are, is to be able to tell the story of how you got into leadership. And I think even though I have a lot of different instances where I could have a moment where I was like, this is a really pivotal moment where I made a choice, and that choice was to go the role of a leader versus being the IC, or just, potentially being someone that was going to sit back and observe. And I would say the moment for me that clicked is when I was at UC Berkeley, and it was my first proper L&D job. I was the manager of learning and development for a group called Campus Shared Services. And at that time, the university was about $10 million in debt. And that required every organization on campus to have to lay off a percentage of their staff every quarter. We were at a 7% decrease, which was very demoralizing. We were at a loss of resources. We had about 11 senior leaders that were infighting all of the time because they didn't have enough to be successful. And they felt that strain. They felt that tension, to use your word. And so my job was to come in and to listen and to try and find band-aids, if you will, of how I could connect one group to the other so that we could have more shared resources, we could have more shared personnel. But they didn't want to work together. So when I got into this role, and I was feeling so proud of myself, guys, you got to understand, I had made it. I was on a senior leadership team. I was working in L&D. How I had gotten here, I was kind of like, how this path took me, but I was finally in the room. And then when I saw how the sausage was getting made, I was like, well, I'm vegetarian for life. This is
Yeah,
horrendous.
same.
Because when they're out, right, they're trying to be a shared group, and they're trying to be unity. But when the doors are closed, they are not working together. And I sat for about maybe 6 weeks listening to them basically just yell at each other, just express frustration, really vent about things that weren't working for me. And I could see that other people, there was no empathy. There was no listening. There was no attempt to try and understand. There was only, I have to get my position because I need my team to be successful. And I could feel that that was a strain for them. And knowing that I wasn't going to have a voice in that room at all, what I chose to do is I would pick a couple people per week in between those SLT meetings, and I would go and I would speak to them, and I would say, I heard you speak about pain. I heard you speak about frustration. I'd love to learn more about what that looks and feel like. And I would also love to learn more of, like, what does success look and feel like for you and for your organization? So I conducted these interviews for the majority of the SLT team. And I kind of come up with some, I thought, good ideas, but still didn't know, like, how to breach it, how to get it in there, because again, didn't trust myself, didn't have that level of confidence where I was like, you can be the voice in the room. And it literally happened that one time in one of these SLT meetings, they just stopped talking. They had had a pretty heated argument and there was silence, which never happened. So then I thought it a good idea to just step in and just immediately start spewing out all these ideas that I had had based on weeks and weeks of sort of interviewing and creating a plan. And what was funny is that when I started, nobody said anything. And I have to tell you guys, I felt so good. I was like, this is it. They're listening to everything that I'm saying. So then I got up to the whiteboard and I started drawing, frameworks and, Venn diagrams. And I started putting real specifics in there, and still they weren't saying anything. And I was like, I think I've just solved all the world's problems in like this last, 15 minutes that I've been speaking up here. And finally, when I finished, I turned around and I was like, okay, everybody, give me some thoughts. What are you thinking about? What works? Like, let's stop, continue on this. And my boss, who was sitting in the room, was like, Cara-Lyn, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You can go. We're going to talk about this, but you're not needed in the room anymore. And the devastation that I felt, that just shook my confidence, because I thought, well, you blew it. You obviously don't know what it is to be in leadership and to work with leaders. And so I went back to my cubicle, as one does. And a little while later in the day, my boss came to me and he sat down and he looked me straight in the eye and just kind of held it for a minute. And he said to me, Cara-Lyn, have you ever thought about being a coach?
Okay.
Now, I knew at this moment, this was going to be like a life-changing question. I didn't know, how, but I could feel like that this was like something in the universe being like, Cara-Lyn, answer appropriately. So I thought about it. And I looked him back in the eye and I said, Javier, I'm very good at sports, but I just don't think I could ever teach somebody to play a sport really well. And of course, that's not what he was talking about. So he laughed in my face and he was like, no, I'm talking about business coaching. I'm talking about, executive coaching, which at the time, no one had really talked about. It wasn't a thing like it is now. And so he had to explain it to me. And he said, in a very simple, but, again, life-changing moment for me, he said, a great coach is a person that can see all the perspectives in the room, highlight them, and create a path forward without making people defensive, but excited about what the future holds. And he said, you did it so naturally. You did it so effortlessly. We are going to apply the majority of things that you suggested in there, but I don't even think you realize the power that you had in front of these leaders with the individual relationships that you had and the courage and the bravery that you came to speak your truth, and the strategy that you brought that is very sound and that we can actually, make applicable. And he said, so I'm going to put you in a program so that you get certified as a coach, and we're going to apply this to your L&D. And that changed the trajectory of my life 1000%. Hard pivot of, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I'm pretty good at this too. I absolutely know how to be in the room and how to be with senior leaders and make that something that's going to create change and impact. And that was the driver for me for every job that I had since then.
What an incredible start to your journey. What was your instinct in that moment when you're like, all right, I'm going to go talk to each individual person and actively listen? Because if you truly are listening to someone, they will tell you what's important to them and the things that are challenges to them. What was the instinct to go do that and then stitch that together and take the stage in front of this group, not knowing what was the outcome, what the outcome would be? Obviously, it turned out to be positive for you, but I'm curious sort of what was going through your mind, if you can recall that.
Yeah, of course. It was so pivotal. I don't know that I'll ever forget it, but I have a real love for people. I don't love the word empath. There's some weird connotation to it, but I sense people's emotions, especially when it's pain or suffering, very, very easily. And to sit there and to know that people were in pain because they were having to lay off members of their team that, didn't deserve to be laid off. It wasn't about performance. It wasn't about, anything that we could track that said, you're less than. It was, we don't have the money to pay you. And this was hurting those senior leaders to have to create an environment where people didn't feel safe, where there wasn't trust. And I felt that so painfully for them that I thought, if I can be a resource in any way, shape, or form, either just to listen, to provide perspective, to talk things out, to be a sounding board, to help create opportunity, to suggest possibility, I was going to do anything that I felt like I had capacity over within myself to do for them. And again, as I mentioned, I could see that I wasn't going to get any traction in the room. So what I knew to do was build relationship one-on-one. And I now can tell you one of my absolute, values in this life is relationships. It's everything to me. It's probably one of my top values because I understand the importance of feeling cared for and of feeling supported and of knowing what people are capable of doing if they have that relationship in their back pocket. So that's what I did is I just simply went to them and I said, I used all the emotional words. I feel your pain. I feel your suffering. I feel your desire for something bigger. I feel your want to make change. When you speak to somebody like that, and it is the truest part of their core, of their entity, they are going to know that you're on their team and they lean in immediately. It is the most beautiful experience to have with another person where you speak their truth out loud, where they maybe couldn't or can't. And then they know that they're communicating and that it's being seen and it's being felt and that there's a person that's going to help them put something into fruition. So I only did what felt very natural to me as a human being. It turns out that's a great leadership skill, and I obviously teach it and use it, in every corporation that I work with now. But again, I don't know that that's something that we teach leaders. This hierarchical component of how a leader, takes the role isn't, let me talk to you about being emotionally intelligent. Let me talk to you about naming the elephant in the room. Let me talk to you about how pivotal and powerful it is when you can build relationships with people who want to work with you, who want to help you move the needle to a positive place. We just assume that when somebody gets the title, they know how to do those things, and they don't. And that's why coaching, I think, is just blowing up, is that you have people that are very specific for driving leaders to their greatest potential through however the coach works. Mine's a very specific type of coaching, but through their specific, frameworks or ideologies to help somebody become the change maker, the innovator. And that's, I think, why a lot of coaches do the work that they do, because they get that aha, and that's sort of a drug for them. It is for me, for sure. And so I just knew inherently that if I could provide value to them as individuals, that I would gather enough data to be able to create something. They gave it all to me. All I did was just put the puzzle pieces together to make it make sense. It was very logical once you had all the data. And then I presented it. And again, it was just, they couldn't do that with each other. So all I did was step in and sort of create a bridge or a Band-Aid or whatever you want to used to say. I took two things and put them together with my, prowess and, whatever big Leo words I can use. But it was very easy once it started. And again, it just made sense to me in an intuitive way. And now I teach people to be in touch with that intuition and what that looks like for them as leaders.
Very cool.
To have that gift and exercise it and then turn it into, I guess at least part of your playbook is super cool. And it started at UC Berkeley higher ed, was instilled from your youth, from your family influences.
Yep.
And your early childhood. How did that translate into big government contractor like Booz Allen and tech like Square, Block, Nextdoor? Were there subtle differences, major differences? How did that start to manifest inside those different industries?
Yeah, I want to be very cognizant that, maybe people I've worked with are going to listen, especially big administrators. But when you work in the government, and at Booz Allen, I was a contractor for the Department of Health and Human Services, which UC Berkeley and the DHHS, they move at a pace that's a touch slower than maybe other corporations. There's a lot of hoops and tapes and things that people do. So I always felt the strain of wanting to move quickly and to do work faster, because that's, again, now that I understand about ADHD and my process of just wanting to go, that always felt like tension for me, that I couldn't move the needle fast enough for what was going to satisfy me. So I very casually, I have to tell you, so casually, just applied to a few jobs that I thought maybe this would be interesting. But I was probably going to retire as a Berkeley Bear. I just knew that was, the golden handcuffs, the whole thing. I wanted to be there forever. I loved academia. But I got an interview for Square. It was the head of leadership development. And, you mentioned potentially there are key figures in your life that you're like, this person changed my life. Francois Cadeau, give him a shout out right here. He was the manager of that team. And he did my interview. And I was feeling at that time, this is when I was the department manager of astronomy at UC Berkeley, that I was really frustrated that people weren't communicating with leaders because of how senior they were with honesty. We weren't naming the challenges. We weren't naming the problems. And in doing so, we were letting them down. And then therefore, they were letting down their teams and their parts of the organization. And so when I got in my first interview with him, I just was really salty. And I was like, you got to get in the room. I said, if I was in a room with Jack Dorsey, I would tell him, this is what I think, and this is what I see, and these are opportunities for you to grow. And I would push it right, and I just was very aggressive about, what I wanted for leaders to evolve into a more human, but, directive entity within organizations. And he loved it. He was like, this is exactly what we need. He goes, you obviously know the frameworks, you obviously know the literature, you obviously know all the background of how to build leadership. He said, but what we need someone to go in and almost be a no woman. Not a yes man, but a no woman. Like, no, we're not going to do that. No, that's not the way we're going to do it. No, we've got to shift our way. And I was just feeling really empowered to push the envelope and to challenge where I thought, we weren't doing that very well, to say, this is an assumption that you have that you think is going to work. And let me tell you why it is and it isn't. Let's just look at the possibilities. So when I got hired in that role, that to me was like absolute kismet. That was, shout out again to Block and to Square and to the team that I worked with. That was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life.
Okay.
Everyone from senior leaders down to the most junior ICs, they wanted to learn. They wanted to be met with programming that was interesting and challenging and pushed the envelope and made them feel like they were doing something different. I can't tell you how many programs that we created, referencing back to the Integral Lead, as you mentioned, which was our attempt at saying, we know how leadership development has been done in the past, and it's not working. It's not working for the pace that we need to do in business for today. So we're going to create something that is experiential, that is using real-time techniques and strategies, that we are pushing scenarios so that we can have tabletop scenarios and know what we would do the second that we're going to leave the room. We wanted to change behavior in order to speed up success and action for individuals and then groups as a whole. And so I came in and I was told by Francois, do whatever it is you want to do. We trust you. Whoa. Okay. So I don't know.
That's power right there.
I know. I was
Yeah.
going to say, I ask you both back, think of the last time that somebody just said, carte blanche, you can do whatever you want because I trust you to do it. And I know that you're going to do it well. And that's, I think, one of those moments in any person's life where it just takes off. Who you are as a person is going to change people that are touched in your ripple effect. And that's how it was for me. And I spent 3 years there creating programming that was kind of wild. We just tried things. And if it worked, we doubled down on it. If it didn't work on it, I used the
Nice.
acronym FAIL, frequent adventures and learning. So wherever we failed, we knew that there was a lot of material there to help us iterate and do something better the next time. And I used to go into, engineering teams and product teams and finance teams and be like, fail as hard as humanly possible so that we can get that data and we can know how to do better each and every iteration. And I have a lot of energy. I don't know if that's coming through to both of you.
It's
I have
coming through. Yeah.
But I have a lot of energy and I have a lot of belief and possibility. And I think that becomes something that other people buy into really quickly when they know that you actually care. I'm not just a speaker box. I'm not just standing on some, pillar trying to say, like, this is how we do it so that we can look good on our engagement surveys and our culture surveys or whatever, that we're producing externally. I said, I want you to change so that you can feel like a good human being, that you are doing good for your families, for yourselves, for your company, for your teams. And to kind of talk about whole person leadership was really where I started that, which is at Block, which is talking about it doesn't matter where you sit in a company. It doesn't matter who you are in the world. If you choose individually to say, I want to be a leader in my community, in my family, in my job, in my role, in any capacity, I'm going to help you to do that. Because if we can have a world full of leaders who are emotionally intelligent, relationally intelligent, and strategically intelligent, we are going to do better than potentially what we're doing right now, which is, a whole nother topic for a whole nother podcast. So that was, my sort of belief system, which was taking that idea of whole person leadership and really just, making it something that was really risky and new in an effort to push things through so that we could test data. And then I learned that not every company wants to do that. And that was my experience after Block. Is I took a more senior level role at another tech company, and we didn't have alignment. We didn't have that buy-in. And it made it really challenging to sell people a belief system for change when they knew that potentially their senior leaders didn't believe in it and weren't going to support it. And to have that disconnect felt very stark to me. It felt very vulnerable because you're basically saying we have to treat people in a way that allows them the opportunity to see their own growth and possibility, their opportunity to see what their second chances can be. And when people say, no, that's not what I want to put time and attention to be creative in that, it was a challenge for me. And I can't say I was enormously successful. And I left that role thinking, I need to really decide what it is that I want to do, because if I take jobs like that, I'm going to lose myself. And I know that I have impact in this world, and I have to choose to believe I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And then I took 3 months off, which was recommended by another friend of mine who owns his own business, very successful business. And he said, take a break, CLG, go to the beach, just defrag a little bit and think about who you are and what you want to do in the world. And so I took 3 months off, and then I decided to start CLG Coaching and Consulting. And I get to do everything that I want to do in a way that I want to do it, with huge success to the organizations that I partner with. And it has been one of the greatest experiences and opportunities of my entire life, hands down.
All from failing forward.
Failing forward. Let's do this.
Failing forward. Let's do it.
Save over $200 when you book weekly stays with Vrbo. This winter, if you need to work, why not work from a chalet? If you haven't seen your college besties since, well, college, you need a week to fully catch up in a snowy cabin. And if you have to stay in a remote place with your in-laws, you should save over $200 a week. That's the least we can do. So, you might as well start digging out the lawn johns, because saving over $200 on a week-long snowcation rental is in the cards. Book now at Vrbo.com.
I mean, that's incredible. You rarely get someone who says, well, one, like, you go in and do this speech and, in your head it's one thing, and then outside it's a different thing, and then literally your path changes like on a 90-degree pivot, which is incredible. I don't think, and even the going into I believe you said it was
UC Berkeley, that Square. Yeah.
So going into Square and having someone say, yes, just fail forward, like just get the data, because I don't think a lot of times people are brave enough for that, to just say, hey, let's just plow forward and let's dream big and see what happens. I mean, I don't think you could get that at most jobs, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean? Most people are like, no, it has to be straight and narrow. You have to stay on this line of perfection. Everybody's, especially where I came from in the film industry, it was so stressful, and then you had to be perfect every single day. So
Yep.
it's refreshing. And maybe that's a software thing. Michael, maybe you could speak on that. But
Yeah.
maybe that's the industry where they want you to sort of fail forward. I don't know.
The tech industry definitely likes to say that they want you to fail forward, fail fast. It's in the ethos of it. I don't know if it always holds true, but oftentimes if you are willing to do that, it is rewarded. They want you to understand and take calculated risks, see if it works. That becomes data or data points, so that you can adjust and evolve over time, or make a decision like, hey, this is a complete wrong path. Let me pivot and do something else. That's been my experience, and I'm sure CLG has seen some of that as well. What is kind of like in my head, and from what I think I know about Jack Dorsey and some of the leadership team, is that he's got a very like Zen approach to him, or maybe he's developed that, and how some of the dynamics from that in a leadership to maybe some of the things that are one level down that may be occurring, and how to reconcile some of that goes on within the tech industry. He's a founder, and also talks about some of the things he does for his biohacking and, wellness. I'm curious if any of the, outlier type of behavior maybe influenced what you did, or you were able, from that moment that you built that confidence at UC Berkeley, to really stay true to who you are, at least up until the point where you felt you needed to take a break, and how that was able to influence things inside these organizations.
Yeah, Jack's an interesting case. Sure, if he
Yeah,
if I hope he ever listens to this, I loved working with him, because I think he really embraced the idea of whole person development. I didn't know that obviously at the time, but one of his remits was coach-like leadership. He really wanted us to build coach-like leadership principles, which again, at the time, nobody really knew what this meant. But from him, it's the idea you have to teach people to fish. And if you're going to create a team of people, an organization of people that all feel empowered and accountable and have ownership, they have to learn how to fish. So if you are the type of manager or leader that is constantly going to solve for other people and remove their ability to critically think, remove their ability to, experience failure and success individually and as a team, you are not developing them to be the type of employee that is going to be able to take risks, that's going to be able to have that level of trust and psychological safety to suggest things that are wild and outside of the box in order to potentially name the one thing that could beat your competitor in these very slim races that we are for who's going to have the best product out at the earliest time. And so, he really supported programming through our team, our L&D team, that said, challenge people to learn to do the best thing that they can for themselves, that turns out the best thing that they can for the team. And in doing so, challenge them to fail, challenge them to be tasked with figuring out a path that's going to work best for them. And, coaching, a lot of people are like, what really is coaching? Coaching is that you already have an answer. We know that you do. You just haven't been able to articulate what it is. And it's going to be the best solution for you, because what's going to work for you is going to work a lot better than what I think works for me to try and force onto you. There's nuances to every person just in terms of how fast they work and how they like to work and what's the, information that they need in order to be successful. And so a great coach figures out those different components and then sets them on a linear path so that someone can just move really quickly through them. I think he knew that that was a pathway for the success of his company, was to say, really look at yourselves, again, emotionally, relationally, and strategic, and try to take ownership of what that looks like for you to solve versus somebody else solving for you. And so he was kind of a dream CEO to work with in a lot of ways, because we got carte blanche to do what we wanted to do, where, again, having worked for other CEOs that really like control and really like things to be the way that they see them and they want them, it's hard to be a CEO that is, I don't want to say hands off, but that believes in the process and lets there be room for the process, versus saying, if it's not my way, then you will have to take the highway. And, again, I've been in a lot of organizations where I see different styles of leadership, and I can tell you very early on whether I think that company or that team is going to be successful based on that experience.
Cool. It makes me think of the idea of personal power versus positional power, CLG. And, when you get to these positions of power, sometimes the control aspect of that can lead to maybe not so great things. But personal power, as you've just talked about for a lot of this conversation, is about building that trust and respect for other individuals and unlocking their potential. And, I guess Jack Dorsey maybe is an outlier on a number of fronts, but I appreciate you sharing his story here, because I've always respected him as a founder and tech leader. And what led up to your 3-month break to reset. Tell us now a little bit about CLG Coaching and how you've applied all of the learnings from both the great and maybe different leaders, and all the learnings from that to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, just a light summary of 20 years of career.
Yeah, it's just a sprinkle.
I'm going to give you kind of the end story and then work backwards, which is, I felt so confident that I had come up with something unique that I hadn't seen any other person or organizations doing, that I actually applied for a PhD, of which I'm now in a program at Gonzaga University for leadership studies, based on this concept of the art of learned intelligence. And what I believe, and I used the word earlier, is about fluidity in these intelligence pillars, which I'm primarily focusing on emotional, relational, and strategic. You've heard me mention them multiple times, because I understand now the pathways and sort of the infinite pathways, that happen in order for leaders to grow and evolve, and to do that with masses of people, with giant projects, in order to create change. And so for me, I had to kind of sit down and take stock of the fact that I had worked with leaders at every level, of every type of organization, from nonprofit to academia to fintech to, government offices, that I knew enough and I had enough experience that if I could figure out how to package it, if I could figure out, how to take the real, coffee grounds of what each of those are, to understand that, people aren't different. They are unique in their own capacity, but there are key tenets to making leaders really phenomenal. And again, it's not just a leader because of your title or of your position. It's, human leadership, to take accountability and to say, I want to make change because it's good for me. It's good for the people that I, am around. So I have really gone down the rabbit hole of creating programming that, deeply challenges people to look at themselves. And I want to just say, because I'm going through my own all the time L&D, personal L&D, I put myself through these hoops. I make sure that I do the work of challenging myself and struggling through things that are really hard in life, as each of you have done. And some people go, okay, well, I can't touch that. It's too hard. It's too painful. And so they create a pattern or behavior that's not going to serve them, but it has in the past, and they're going to stay that person. You know, the people that I'm talking about that won't evolve, and that's a choice that they've made. I choose to be the type of person that says until the day, they put me back up into the sky, I'm going to try to evolve in every way that I can. So when I feel a struggle, when I feel that I've let myself down, I've let other people down, that I don't feel good, I deeply unpack what that looks like, because I understand that sharing that experience with other people, whether that's I figured out a pain point in a process at work, I figured out a pain point within a process of me, that is going to connect to another person where they can see that they have that same possibility and probability to also evolve. And so I take my own experiences and I challenge people to really look at themselves and to feel connected to what they already know is true, but it's honoring that. And then how can they share that with other people in order to build morale and relationship and collaboration and communication, so that when a group of people decide that they are bought into doing the same thing, that could be a family unit that wants, to grow as a family, that could be a relationship between two people, that can be a team, that could be an entire organization. I'm taking organizational theory right now. So, so many things about how
Yeah.
you build organizations from a lot of different standpoints. But the idea is that when you get a mass group of people to move in one unit, that's when you're going to create a strategic change and possibility. And so then I say, okay, then if you've done something really beautifully that's strategic, that either was successful or was failed, and again, failure is also amazing and we love it, then you go back and you say, how did that make me feel? Like, how did I show up, and did I like that version of myself? And do I feel like I was the best version to do that thing? And then you go, okay, I want to iterate a little bit on that. Now I'm going to share again with the people that said, I didn't do that very well, or I did that excellently, or you did that excellently, or we didn't do that very well. So many different ways that we get to
Mm.
use it to communicate. And then again, you have a group of people that can share openly, that have psychological safety, that say, what if we tried? What if we could? What would it look like? And then somebody throws something out, it sticks, we strategically move to it, we create something, there's successes, there's failures, you loop back again. So I want to be able to work with leaders and organizations that believe in that infinite quality of growth and development. And I want to take the programming that I am creating, and it's proprietary, and I feel very special to be able to say, like, I've got trademarks and copyrights, whatever. The idea is that I think I've come up with something that I haven't seen in leadership development before, and it feels modern, and it still feels true to, the tenets of therapy and coaching and caring and active listening, and really trying to have partnership while also trying to drive people to do their best work while thinking about the common man and the common purpose in that whole loop. So, lighthearted things that we get to talk about, over drinks on Friday night happy hour. But, I believe in it and it's working, and I have enough experience to be able to say, I know you think it won't, but let me give you a story of how it did in this environment or in that environment or at that leader level or, with that senior leadership team. And if you have enough and you can story tell well enough, people are like, I'm buying what you're selling. And so that's how I think we've been successful as an organization, is because I come in and I say I care deeply and I challenge directly. And I think people really feel that with me whenever they're working with me. And I hope, your listeners are going to feel that as well.
I'm sure they will, and
Yeah.
I know firsthand, sitting in the rooms with my peers, and then people who maybe I would report to, that there's always this sort of underlying sense of judgment. I'm gonna, for what I say or what I ask,
Yeah. Yeah.
I may get judged, and that might be individuals' biggest fear for not putting forward their ideas or questions or things amongst their group, because it could be catastrophic, allegedly, for their career and where they want to go in life. Is that something that you're finding, and how do you help individuals overcome that particular thing?
I mean, I think you just surfaced something that goes to the heart of like human being existence, which is, am I going to be accepted?
Mhm.
Is the person that I am, is the way that I think, is someone going to say, I appreciate that and I celebrate that and I'm supportive of that? And that's just a human trait that we all have to suffer with. So going back to that, emotional intelligence component, it's, have I done the work to know that I can trust myself? That I know that when I'm doing something, it's aligned to my values, it's aligned to my purpose, it's aligned to my mission. Do I even know what those things are? So again, if you have a really good coach, no matter, where a person comes in their development, it's always good to go back and say, can you tell me your values? Can you tell me what you think your purpose is in this earth? Like, can you tell me what you think, you'd like to achieve? And when people get clarity on that, they're willing to make a stand to say, I want to share what my belief systems are, knowing that I believe them enough for both of us. And so, I deal with judgment all the time. I mean, again, I stand up in front of groups I've just met and I have to give really deep truths and,
Hmm.
hard lessons. But I know that because one of my foundational pieces that I care about people, relationships are everything to me, that again, I want growth and development for people, that I come and I use that as part of my narrative. So I don't just say, this is what I think and I'm scared to tell you, or this is what I think and I feel vulnerable. Those are all true. I say, this is what I think and I'm scared to tell you because I want you to believe it so badly, because I want you to know that you have that power. And once you shift into your knowing, then someone else is going to say, oh, it's hard to doubt a person that really, has that. And let's say they do judge you, right? Are you strong enough to be able to say, great, tell me where those judgments come from? 9 times out of 10, if you can really go down that rabbit hole, the person's going to know it's something from their own past. It's a trauma
Yep.
that they have. It's a wound that they
Oh
have.
yeah.
It literally has nothing usually to do with the person that is making the argument. It has something to do with what you trigger in another person. And again, trying to understand all of these things, different concepts, and put them into my hopeful thesis, in a few years from now when I, write about the art of learned intelligence. I am going to talk about all the trauma that we have and the lessons that we learn as children and the foundational beliefs that we have that are potentially not ours and how they evolve us into adults where we have this now story that we tell everybody and this is who we are, and yet that's not serving us and it's not who we are. So I think that there is a much bigger and deeper discussion. I honestly could talk about this for forever, but it is about trusting yourself. And it's when somebody challenges you or judges you, you're confident enough to say, I hear that this is not for you. Can you tell me why? And can you tell me where you first felt, that this wasn't going to be something that could, work for you just on like an overarching look at somebody's life? And, most people, they don't have the time. They don't have the confidence to do that. And again, that's why I think great coaches, they just want to get right in there. It's hard to be in relationship with me if you're a surface person. I'll tell you that. Like, I don't come to dinner parties and I'm like, God, what's your favorite color? I'm like, I need to know your deepest, darkest secret and how you're planning to like address it and move forward with it. And they're like, oh, great, I'm going to need some wine. And I'm like, got it. But again, I'm just going to lean to, as something that I hope, your listeners take away, which is judgment is not about you. Judgment is about themselves. And if you can
Yep.
hold that, then I think it relieves a lot of burden on you to make it better for them.
I come from a my passion is comedy, so I've done live comedy all around the country, and we've done shows. And you want to talk about someone sitting right in front of you,
Totally.
and or on the internet or whatever. I mean, you
Totally.
have to get past that sort of mark of everyone's gonna like it, everyone's gonna love it, because it just never happens.
Yep.
And people are dealing with their own stuff, and
Yep.
there's a lot of misery out there, and a lot of. But I think I have trouble celebrating some of those wins sometimes. Of hey, something went well, something went great, and here's how I should celebrate. I really just turn off and go right back to work. So I don't know where I was going with that, but
Well, if I
point
could
being, it's very hard to please everyone. It's never going to happen.
And I think, using comedy is like a perfect example because there is nothing more vulnerable than going and standing on a stage and trying something out and feeling the visceral moment where it doesn't land and going,
Yeah,
okay, the show must go on. I must go into the
yeah,
next joke. I mean, I say that with musicians, I say that with comedians, but there is no work, and that's leadership. That's choosing
hmm,
to be the voice in the room that's stating the thing. And, comedy's getting a lot of trouble right
yeah,
now for just stating things that are true and trying to do it in a way that is lighthearted enough so that people will buy into it. But it is hard to be the person that stands up there and says, this is what I see.
yeah.
And, whatever that looks like. And so, kudos to you, by the way. I also love comedy and I try to infuse it in everything I do very lightly
Oh yeah,
just to diffuse situations. But I will say that's one of the greatest leadership, roles, I think, if you had to name one, is comedians that can do that work and name the thing and take the brunt of it and then be resilient enough to go back
oh
out,
man,
either that night or the next night and go, let's see if I can iterate on it to make it land. And that's all we're trying to do is iterate on something to make it land for the people that we are going to touch, whether that's in the audience, whether that's on our teams, again, whether that's in our family, to create something that is, malleable and movable and creating possibility. And so I love it. I absolutely love that example.
Jeremy, if I ever work up the courage, we'll do comedy improv together.
a two-man team.
I'm saying it. I'm putting it out into the universe.
Accountability.
I know, and I shouldn't do that because I know when you put things out into the universe with
Yep.
words, like they tend to happen.
Yep.
So now we've already just started the path of like winding up on a stage together, which terrifies me, but it's all right.
There's no better way to get that second, third, fourth skin than just to go up there and pour your heart out to something that you've really put time and energy and love into,
Yep.
like
That's the
when I
word.
wrote those things and helped write those things, like every word I looked at, I considered, it's so, but yeah, it's getting that second skin, that third skin, like nothing can faze me now except my own, that's the other part is like the self-judgment, and that's worse than anybody can
It
ever
really
say to
is. It
anybody.
really,
Yeah.
really is. That's the
Yeah.
toughest one to work in, even though everyone thinks it's like, oh, define strategy, define relationships. I'm like, do you know yourself? Can you love yourself? Can you
Yeah.
forgive yourself? I'm working
Exactly.
on it every day. So all I can tell you is, yes, it's very painful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a work in progress. But
Always.
The question that I ask myself more often as I get older is, how do I want to be remembered? It's a really important question, and it actually is probably some of the driver for taking the risk and doing the thing and trying it out and failing forward and having the courage to just ask the question or whatever. And just to bring that down on a scale for our audience and for Cara-Lyn to share with them what her practical advice or insights that she wanted to leave behind with our audience
Yeah.
who are just getting started in their second act or just contemplating it. They haven't worked up the courage to start it yet. What would that be?
Yeah, I'm going to start this answer with something I just looked up while you were saying it is I found this quote by Jane Austen that I felt like when you talk about like what is my purpose, what is my legacy, and it says, "I don't know what it means to love people halfway. It's not in my nature. My affections are always excessive." And I think that when we choose self-love, when we give ourselves permission to evolve, when we give ourselves permission to not know all the rules of the rodeo on our only second rodeo, I think what happens is that we remove the self-blame, we remove the self-doubt, we remove this feeling of perfectionism that I think, especially in Western cultures, we're told that we have to have figured it all out by some certain age. And what that does is just, it closes us down to the feeling of evolution, the belief system that we don't want to say the same way every year of our entire life because we're not evolving to what the world needs us to be. And so I feel very strongly to say if you can give yourself the idea you're not erasing your past, you're evolving from one version of yourself, one character of yourself, one chapter of yourself. What you're doing is you're taking all the best pieces and you're just molding that into whatever version of a person that you want to be. So ask yourself the tough questions. This is almost a great place for ChatGPT, if we can even talk about AI on here, is to say, what question should I ask myself to really connect me to my purpose or to connect me to what it is to continue to change? And so, like, what parts of my career lift me up the most? What skills or experiences that I have that, I haven't expressed yet that I want to? What do I want to see in the world that I don't, but I have the ability to, touch? You want to drive your own reflection and self by saying, journaling, you can talk to your iPhone, you can send yourself
Yeah.
an email, you can talk to a friend, but you have to, and I think that you mentioned it, Michael, that you got to ask the universe, you got to put it out there and say, this is what I want to do is I want to evolve. I'm scared. Let's use that language. I'm scared to do it. And also I'm scared of the person that I will not become if I don't challenge myself. So you don't have to know the script. You don't have to know the ending. What you do have to give yourself permission to do is risk take. You have to give yourself permission to try something and fail because clarity doesn't come before the leap. It comes after. I always say when I have a client on the precipice, my job is to simply go like, boop, just they're there. They just need one little push over because when you're in that fall, everything becomes clear. It comes through action and you try and you learn and you adjust and you keep moving, but you have to trust your intuition. You have to trust that the process starts when you let go. And so everything that's ever happened to me that was in a really monumental way is when I chose to not listen to what is, standards and say, this is how it's always been done. But I say, I'm going to do it the way it feels good in my heart. I'm going to do it the way it feels good potentially for, risk taking and for my pocketbook. And again, trying to do something that is different, and not to say different for the sake of being different, but because I'm a unique individual and I can't do it like everybody else. So give yourself that permission, whatever that looks like. Now, if that means hiring a coach that's going to help you to do that, do that. If it means going to a therapist, because you've got to talk about things in your past. We talked about the wounds that you haven't been able to heal. You have to take a stand in dedicating money and time and resources and talking to your people about dedicating those money, time, and resources so that you can grow. And the more that you can build a community that wants you to succeed, that wants you to get what it is that you want, you got now people behind you, you got your own resources behind you, and suddenly you're going to find a lot more people are buying what you're selling, whether that's if you're your own business leader and you decide, you want to put a product out there. People are going to buy it because it feels full circle. It feels like whole leadership. So that's going to be my takeaway, which I hope isn't too generic, and challenge me if it is when people say, trust yourself, believe in yourself, push the envelope. I think it's just about giving yourself permission to evolve and fail and try again. And that's, I think, my biggest takeaway.
A perfect takeaway.
Awesome.
It definitely speaks to Jeremy and my own personal journey
Absolutely.
that we're on right now, and a good reminder to all of us to not be so worried about the outcome. Just put your heart into it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And as a perfectionist, man, that doesn't make life easier.
Yeah,
It makes it so much harder. But just let go. Yeah, let go. Put the good stuff out in the world and then move on to the next thing. That's
Can
what
I
would
even
say.
just say, perfect the art of letting go? Like, if we're perfectionists, then let's even go to, I'm going to perfect what it is to be able to say, I didn't get it and I'm moving on. Like, perfectionists, we have an idea that it's got to be whatever perfect is. I just want to say for all the perfectionists that are listening to
Shout
this
out
today,
to all of our friends
that
out there.
you get to say, I want to be perfect in failing. I want to be perfect in risk taking. I want to be perfect in letting it go. And that's a practice all unto itself.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
wow, I did it and I got over it in 24 hours versus it took me 6 months. I got to go through a breakup and I can't get past it to, want to be with another person. How do you build that resilience to go, this is what I learned and this is how I know I am and this is who I know I want to be, and do it again? So be perfect in failing. And again, I think we can get all of the people that we want to create, evolution within themselves if they just, again, give themselves permission.
Well, I think we typically wrap up these, and I say we, I've never done it before, but we typically wrap up these episodes. What kind of plugs do you have? Tell us where people can contact you if they want to get a hold of you.
Let's. So I have a very, unique website, which is clgcoaching.com. And there you can learn a little bit about the different programming that we do, which is executive coaching, leadership coaching, team coaching. That's one thread that we do. We also do a lot of facilitation. So there's a lot of programming that we offer that's very specific. So we get a lot of companies that say, we need feedback, we need communication, we need performance management. Obviously, we've worked in L&D for 1,000 years. So we have all of that very specific training content. But also, I think what we're really doing that's exceptional and aligns to the values that the company has and that I have is that we do experiential offsites. And what I love to do, I love a trapped audience. So I love to get people into a room and I love to say, let's say what our problem is, and then let's, as a group in real time, fix it so that we're leaving with something that feels like we've made progress. And there's no slides that you get to do with that. There's no prep that you get to do. You have to be confident to sit in the front of the room and say, someone bring a problem and we're going to break it down and we're going to figure out how to work it out as a group. And I feel that that's where, the company has really taken a huge step forward is in these working with teams and working with groups of people to create cohesion and to create movement. And again, every single one of them, I say, think about yourself first, think about this group and how that they can be successful as a team, and then think about what this team can accomplish strategically if we, have all of our ducks in a row. And so, clgcoaching.com or hello@clgcoaching.com. And I love to just talk. So just, feel free to connect and tell me what's a challenge you think you can have. If I can't help you, I won't. I'll direct you to somebody else. But I certainly will try because I'm a perfectionist and I believe, I can do most things. But yeah, and again, it's the art of learned intelligence is our new programming that we're offering. And again, that's how to really build fluidity in leaders around that emotional, relational, and strategic intelligence. We're very excited about the programming. It's very successful so far, so we're feeling really pleased with that. And we'd love to bring it to your organizations.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool.
In just this hour, I've learned so much talking with you, Cara-Lyn. This has been amazing conversation.
Thank you.
I loved
Same.
hearing about your journey, and we certainly wish you all the best. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to sit front row to your comedy show. Yay! Please send me the link for the tickets.
Oh, my gosh.
California,
Oh, no.
though,
Here
right?
it
We haven't
goes.
been out
This
in
is how
California
it
in a while,
starts.
so-
This is how it starts. San Francisco's got some great clubs. They're waiting for you.
Yeah, we did Sketchfest like 5 years. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
cool. Well, very nice to meet you. I think this was amazing for Michael and John's audience. And yeah, I guess, Michael?
Yeah. I guess we'll say
we'll
that's
see
a
everybody
wrap.
next time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Cara-Lyn.
The second act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act Movement on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.